Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I just wanted to do a quick update about how reg is going so far. So if you're new to my channel or if you just want a little update, I am currently studying for the CPA exam. I have passed 3, so this is my last section, and because of that I am really motivated to make this my last test. If you are familiar with the CPA exams, they're very difficult. I've had a lot of questions about CPA stuff, so I figured I would talk a little bit about how it's going so far, if I feel like it's getting easier, which I do not feel like it's getting easier, and all of that fun stuff. So I started studying for reg right after I found out that I passed BEC, which was really nice. I have in the past started studying prior to knowing if I passed the section that I was working on, and I don't recommend that, just because if you need to restudy, it's best, in my opinion, to continue with that same subject. Of course, it worked out for me, so just do what kind of works best for you. The main thing that I've realized with CPA studying is that there's no right or wrong way to do it. You just have to find what works best for you, what works best for that section, and I've talked about that a ton. So I am currently almost done with chapter 2, and I figured I'd just talk to you guys about how it's been going, what I've noticed, what I've changed this time around. That way, so if you are also studying for reg and you're just struggling, or you feel like, you know, you feel weird about it, is that normal, stuff like that, you'll get an idea. So the first 2 chapters have been extremely interesting to me. I think how motivated you are and how well you absorb the material really depends a lot on what you're interested in and your strengths and how much exposure you've had to certain topics. Now in school, I only took 1 tax class because I never intended to go into taxes. I just wasn't really interested in it. But I have to say, me and Jason did just get our 2018 taxes done, and the timing of it couldn't have been better. Our tax accountant went through all of our tax return and explained, because I have like my Sara Marie business, how all of that impacts our taxes. I have spoke to her numerous times throughout the year just to get an idea of what to expect, especially with my Etsy shop. And so this section is really interesting to me just because it's so relevant to my little side business. I have gotten a ton of questions, and I figured I'd mention this here. I'm sure like the people who are probably asking aren't watching this, but just for you guys to know, and you probably get this if you're watching this, but I don't do my own taxes because I don't specialize in tax. Accounting is very similar to a lot of different professions where you really focus on something or you specialize in something. So I don't do taxes every day, so I know the basics of taxes, but I don't know, like, I don't file them every day. I don't work on other people's taxes. I work slightly on my company's taxes, like my normal accounting job, but that's very limited because of course that's extremely complicated. So I don't specialize in accounting, or I don't specialize in tax, so I don't do my own taxes. Of course, having a base knowledge is really important for anybody. Jason has learned a lot about taxes because we've sat down with our tax accountant, but I don't have the expertise or the experience to be able to do those types of tax returns. In the past, when we've had very simple tax returns, I could totally do that. I actually, before we would go into our tax appointments, I would like print out a 1040 and just work through it and get an idea, and we normally came really close to what our accountant actually said. But that's kind of why I don't do our own taxes. So the last 2 chapters have been extremely interesting. The last 2 chapters have been all about like personal taxes, so you talk about deductions, credits, all of that, stuff that I've always wondered about. And although it's extremely interesting, in the very beginning I always feel a little lost, like how am I supposed to remember all of this information. So if you're feeling like that, do not feel like you're the only one, because every single section at this point, I'm like, this is a lot of information. Like, how in the world am I supposed to remember all of this? And then somehow towards the end with all of the review, you're fine. What I've been doing differently this time around, I have been basically following the same setup that Becker has. I never read the book. People ask me this all the time. I never read, because when you're watching the lectures, you're basically reading the book. You're going through, highlighting the book. So I take my book, watch the lecture, I highlight, I write little notes that they tell you to write down. Then after that, I work on the skills practice, which is again another type of lecture, and then there's like a problem that you can work on. At that point, I either go on to the multiple choice questions, or I take my own notes in my notebook. I use an Erin Condren notebook. I use the 8.5 by 11, so it's the bigger version. I love their notebooks. The paper is really nice and thick. The notebooks are cute. You can customize them. I'll show you. I have my little notebook here, and it says, hopefully you can see it, it just says regulation on there. So I love that I can customize it and have it all set up like that. But I have been taking notes this time around. I did not with BEC until the very end, and I've been really liking it. It does take extra time, and of course, if you probably don't know, I am in Florida still. This is our last day, so I just finished studying, and I figured I'd do a little update for you guys, because I just feel like if you're feeling like me, if you're feeling lost in the very beginning, I want people to know that that's normal, because I have felt like that every single time I started a new section. And every time I'm like, oh, I don't know how I'm supposed to remember all of this, like all these limits, all these exclusions, all these rules. And somehow you do, somehow at the very end with, you know, pounding the multiple choice questions, you get it. So anyway, I've been taking notes this time around. I have been doing that either before or after the multiple choice questions. Lately it's been before the multiple choice questions, because sometimes with the multiple choice questions you just need to like review everything and get a better understanding of it before you can do it. These questions I've been doing pretty well on. For the most part, I've been scoring either like high 70s, low 80s on the multiple choice questions, which are nice. Like it shows that I am somewhat understanding the material. It's also been good taking notes, because as I see questions, I know what my notes should focus a little bit more on. I do always have lots of stuff in there that I don't see questions on, because you never know. They give you like 15 questions, and of course it can't cover all the material they covered, but I try and like make a little note if that was a question. And this time around, I have noticed that there have been questions on stuff that Becker has not necessarily touched on during the lectures, but of course it's in the book. So they have mentioned multiple times, like the two professors that are teaching, to go back and read the book. If you are going to do that, if you're going to watch the lecture and read the book, this might be the section that would be beneficial for that. Normally what I do though, I don't go back and read it, because it would take too much time. With watching the lecture, taking notes, it would just take too much time to do that. So when I see a question on something like that, I'll go back to my book and just say like, where is this? Like, why is this tested? And did they mention it? And normally I can find it pretty quickly, and then I just add it to my notes. I feel like that's a better plan than to just read through and spend all that time, especially because it's only been a handful of questions. The simulations. So I get a lot of questions about simulations and how I go about studying for those. Honestly, I don't put a ton of weight on simulations, because I've realized that if you know the material, the simulations are just a different type of question for the same material. Regulation though, the simulations seem really difficult, like really difficult. And I don't know if it's just because I don't feel like I have a great understanding of the material quite yet. That could totally be it. Or just the fact that the Becker simulations seem really hard for reg. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I am getting nervous about those on the actual test. What I plan to do with reg, I am probably going to, you know, do my normal thing, and at the very end, depending on how I feel, I may do the final review that Becker has. I have done that in the past for both FAR and for BEC, and it seemed to really help me. I don't know if I'm going to need to do that this time around. I've been taking really great notes. I feel like I have a good understanding, but we'll kind of see. One thing though that I think I'll do differently with reg towards the review part is I think I will work some simulations just to feel a little bit more comfortable, because there are a lot of exhibits, and I just want to make sure that like I'm prepared and I feel like I've had some practice. I feel like that'll give me confidence, even though for the most part you probably won't see those same simulations on the actual exam. So that's kind of how I'm feeling. I have changed a couple of things, like I mentioned. I'm taking notes. That seems to be helping quite a bit. I did create a little study schedule for myself, and I will have a week less to review, which is why I'm trying. So I'm trying to get ahead as much as possible, because I technically only gave myself 9 weeks total instead of 10. I normally do 1 chapter per week, so there's 8 chapters in reg, and then 2 weeks of review. Because of the timing of when scores and stuff would come out, I wanted to make sure I could get my test in so that I wouldn't have to wait a crazy amount of time. So I did give myself 1 less week, but like I said, I'm trying to get ahead. Technically right now, I still have 3 days to finish chapter 2. I'm gonna finish chapter 2 tomorrow, so I'll be 2 days ahead of schedule. So as long as I can get like a week ahead of schedule, I'll be okay. In the very beginning, or in the very end as well, I always kind of get like a little burst of energy to finish up. Like the last chapter is always like, okay, I'm just gonna keep pushing, I'm gonna get this done. And so I'm hoping I can make up some time there as well. But I think all the stuff that I'm doing, all the stuff that I'm preparing for ahead of time, I think that's going to make the review process way easier. I haven't been working multiple choice questions like for chapter 1, but I have been going back randomly and just checking my notes, reviewing a little bit, and I think that's going to keep the material a little bit fresher in my mind, which will make reviewing a little bit easier as well. I am proud of myself because we have been on vacation for the last week, and every single morning I have woken up early. Even though we've been staying up super late, I've woken up early, I've studied for like 3 hours every day, and I have just been in the zone, and I'm proud of myself for that. But I realize that it's going to be a lot harder when I get back, because I'm going to have more commitments. I'm going to be working again. My Etsy shop is going to be open. It's going to be a lot harder to focus when I get home. So I tried my best to really do as much as I could while I was here. A lot of people ask me, I wanted to mention this before I close. And one fun thing is, if you guys see, I have made some stickers for studying. I will have these available in my shop pretty soon, so definitely keep an eye out for that. So a lot of people asked me when I asked for questions for a Q&A that I did yesterday, 2 days ago. A lot of people asked me, how many hours per day do you study? How many days do you study? How long does it take to get through the material? Stuff like that. I try to always emphasize that I don't have a set schedule for studying. While we are here, I always try to like get out of the house by like 6:30 and then study until like 9:30. A lot of days that happened, a lot of days that didn't happen. I would leave at like 7:30. You have to be flexible with this process. If you are being extremely strict, if you're not adjusting your schedule based off your life, it's going to feel like you're tied down, and you're going to be hating the process. You're going to feel like it's this weight on your shoulder. I'm trying my best to not feel that way. I'm trying to like be excited about it And I feel like that helps. I feel like that makes the whole process not seem as bad. Of course, as you pass tests, as you pass some of these exams, the process gets easier. The tests are never easier. Getting through the material is never easier. The time commitment's not going to be easier. But as you get some momentum, it doesn't feel as bad. It doesn't feel like it's this impossible thing to accomplish. I definitely feel like I'm gonna be a CPA now. Like, I know that sounds stupid. I know that sounds like weird, but like in the very beginning, especially when I failed FAR, I'm like, am I ever gonna be able to do this? Like, am I smart enough to be able to do this? So if you're having those questions, if you're struggling, if you failed an exam and you just are lacking the motivation, or you're wondering if this is ever going to be, if you're ever going to be able to pass, you will. It just takes time. A lot of it, I honestly think, is just the luck of what questions you get. My first FAR exam, I got a lot of questions on my weak areas, especially with the simulations. And my second exam, none of those topics were covered. Like, honestly, a lot of the topics that I got were more of my strong areas. So I think a lot of it has to do with whether you get questions that you're familiar with or questions that are on topics that you are comfortable with. But you have to realize that every single test that you take is going to be different. So next time around, if you failed one, focus on some of those topics that you're not familiar with. Also focus on some of the topics that you were familiar with, and just kind of go from there. I try and go into every test thinking like, I'm gonna retake this test, because if you go into it thinking that, the test isn't that bad. Finding out your score is always horrible, but the test is not that bad if you're like, who cares? If I have to take it again, I have to take it again. Like, what's the worst thing that's gonna happen? I have to retake the test. I have to pay a couple $100s, but it makes the process a lot easier if you just think of it that way and not think about like, oh, another 6 weeks of reviewing, another test, another $300. Like, if you just go into it thinking like, if I have to retake it, who cares? I retake it. Like, so many people have to retake tests. It's not that big of a deal. One last thing I wanted to mention before I close this out, and leave questions down below if you guys have them, because I know I've had so many questions along this, journey, and I want to help you guys out as much as I can. Join Facebook groups if you can. I don't go on Facebook a ton, but I specifically go on Facebook to look at these groups. If you just search like regulation CPA group or whatever section you're working on, there's like 4, obviously for the 4 section groups, you have to fill in a little questionnaire, they'll accept you, but it's really helpful. I felt like one of the reasons why I passed BEC, and I'm not kidding about this, was because I was a part of that group and I saw a ton of people saying, focus on this topic, make sure you know this topic like the back of your hand. And I did, because I saw all of those comments and I saw those topics so much on my exam. Like, seriously, 25% of what they were talking about I saw directly on my exam. And this is like 1 or 2 topics. So join those groups. Try not to focus on the fact that a lot of people, especially around release time, will say that they failed. Like, that always kind of trips me up a little bit, especially when you're like, I'm studying right now, scores were released like a couple days ago, and people are like, oh, I failed, I got a 65 on reg, I have to retake it, like, this is my 3rd time retaking it. That freaks me out. But if you just try and focus on the positive stuff when they're telling you like, just focus on this, make sure you know this, it comes in really handy. It's helped me a ton. Like I said, it's seriously probably one of the reasons why I passed BEC, because if I didn't see their comments about like, yeah, this is tested a lot, like, make sure you know this, I wouldn't have focused so much on it. Like, I honestly did not think that some of the topics were going to be focused on a lot, and they were focused on a lot. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. Make sure you go check out those groups. I'm not gonna link them down below. Just go on Facebook, search Reg CPA group or BEC or whatever section you're working on. Again, if you guys have questions, leave them down below. I'll try and get back to you guys as soon as I can. And thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys are having fun studying. If you're just watching this because you want to see what's up with my exam, then thank you for doing that. I will try and update you guys a little bit in a couple weeks when I get further into the material and let you guys know how I'm feeling. Again, I feel like I'm really feeling great about the material because I've been on vacation. Like, it's been easy to study. I haven't had a ton of other things to do. But pretty soon, it's gonna get crazy. Like, we're gonna be closing the first quarter, so it's going to be really tough at work and it's gonna be tough to study. So my outlook the next time I update you guys will probably be like, I can't do this. So anyway, thank you guys so much again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.